Tonya? Oh, restroom. Mom?
Hi, Steph. What's up? We can all, nobody's wearing masks. Do you want me to ask people to put masks on, or do you want to sit in the back? Okay.
What's up?
Are you sure? Just because nobody would mind, but.
Tonya? The iPad went to sleep.
We're on live stream too. We do it all.
Are we almost ready? Chris, you almost ready?
Yes.
Okay. You guys ready? Who's ready?
Yes.
We're on? All right, I'm going to hit play. All right. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. We're good? Okay. So welcome to the Bulletproof Your Body workshop, Best Day Fitness. This is the second one we've done so far. I don't know if anyone's here from last week. Obviously, a couple people here from last month. We did our first workshop, so welcome back to the second one for Bulletproof Your Body workshop number 2. Today, I'm going to get the pleasure to talk to you about some running stuff. So running-related injuries is what we'll talk about. I'll tell you when to go to the next slide, but just a little bit about me beforehand. My name's Dr. Ken Clark. You can call me Ken. I'm a physical therapist and owner of Purpose Physical Therapy, which is a concierge physical therapy out-of-network practice here in town. And so my wife is back here with me, Gina. Everybody wave to Gina back there. She is she's the backbone to the business. She does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but very excited to be here again tonight. And I think all of you guys that are here and you guys that are watching are in for some pretty valuable information. We have Dr. Tonya again speaking and Dr. Dyllon here tonight. So very excited to be a part of this group. So the next slide, you guys can go ahead and click for me. As mentioned, today I'm going to talk about some common running-related injuries and what to do about them. So I picked this topic. It's pretty fitting for me right now. I kind of dove into the running world a little bit this year. About 6 months ago, I'm actually running a half marathon on Sunday, my first one. So I thought it'd be very fitting to kind of talk to you guys about it if anyone else is a runner or gets any good information from this. Yeah. So with that being said, now I don't have a ton of time tonight, so this is kind of just an overview of some of the most common things that I see in the clinic and a lot of us PTs and chiropractors see in the clinic from people that come in with running related injuries. And so kind of a brief overview we'll talk about. So first, what is a running related injury? There's a definition. So when we look at the literature and the research to figure out, what are some of the causes to certain running related injuries, well, we have to have a certain definition. We have to define it a certain way to be able to figure out what are some of these causes. So we'll talk about that. We'll go into some quick prevention tips and then some exercises here at the end. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is a running-related injury? So as mentioned, there's been a back and forth as to what it actually is, but the common consensus now is that a running-related injury, training or competition, is musculoskeletal pain in the lower limbs that causes a restriction on or stoppage of running, so whether it's distance, speed, duration, or training, either of those, for at least 7 days, or 3 consecutive scheduled training sessions, or that requires the runner to seek a physician or other healthcare professional. So that's how we're going to define a running-related injury. And so some of the three most common, there's a ton more that we can go into, but these are the ones that I'm going to talk to you guys about today. The most important part is going to be towards the end, which we'll get into. But does anybody know offhand, anybody that's watching that's able to comment, anybody know what the first one stands for? You seen that anywhere? Any of you guys in here? Patellofemoral pain syndrome. Yes, that's one. The next one, ITBS. It's not irritable bowel syndrome. Sometimes I mix those up, but that's iliotibial band syndrome. And then we got plantar fasciitis. So the commonality you guys see here is that it's either the knee or the foot and ankle. So obviously there's injuries that happen, at the hip and everywhere else up the chain, but most commonly we see running-related injuries happen at the knee or the foot and ankle. So we're going to talk a little bit about those today. The next slide. The first one, again, patellofemoral pain syndrome, also known as runner's knee. This is kind of really an umbrella term. So patellofemoral pain syndrome, by the way, in the medical world, if you see the word syndrome attached to the end, oftentimes that means we really don't know what it is, so we just add that word to it. But patellofemoral pain, patella is the kneecap, and femoral, that's the femur, so it's the joint between the kneecap and the femur and the tibia there. So anytime there's pain that develops at the kneecap, above it, below it, or the side, you can kind of group that into that patellofemoral, but oftentimes what we see is pain that happens below the kneecap in that tendon here, which is right here, or above it in the quadriceps tendon. And so I'll come back and loop around this one. Go to the next slide. The next one's iliotibial band syndrome. And so you can see here, Tonya talked a little bit about this last month, so I won't go too much into it, but what the IT band is you can see this part here, the thick white part. So it's a thick band of connective tissue, super strong, and it's attached to the TFL muscle, the glute maximus, and some other ones as it courses along the lateral leg or the outside of the leg and attaches to the tibia or the Gerdy's tubercle. It's a spot on the tibia down here. So its main role is to really provide stability at the hip and stability at the knee when we're walking, when we're running, when we're jumping or climbing stairs. And so as Tonya mentioned last month, the IT band it's not the same as muscle. It's not contractile tissue. So it doesn't contract, it doesn't relax. So you can't, it doesn't contract and it doesn't relax.
Can you stretch it?
We can't stretch it.
Do you want to stretch it?
You don't want to stretch it, right? You can't, really. Honestly, it takes a lot
9,000 pounds
per square inch to elongate it.
to cause any tissue deformation.
Yeah. And so it's pointless to try to stretch the iliotibial, the band, right? But, we do see, and I'll kind of bring this in context a little bit. With this one in patellofemoral pain syndrome, we see a lot of risk factors that occur with these pathologies here. And so when we get to the next slide and I talk about some of the most common causes, it's going to be in addition to some of these risk factors that we do see with these. So, but when we're doing a lot of repetitive running and stepping and that knee is bending and straightening for long periods of time, sometimes that IT band can kind of compress on that knee constantly. You have some bursa that's underneath there too, and it can just get a little irritated. And so with this one and patellofemoral pain, there's many risk factors involved. We won't get into shoe wear. We don't have time for that, but that's just one of them. But some of the most common risk factors that we see or impairments in the leg or the lower extremity happens at the hip and at the knee. I mean, at the hip and at the foot and ankle. So the knee, and Tonya again alluded to this last month, the knee is kind of slave to what the hip and the ankle and foot and ankle do. And so what I mean by that is it's the joint that's literally between the hip and the foot and ankle. And so it's going to kind of do whatever the foot and ankle, the hip tell it to do. So what we see often that's correlated with some patellofemoral pain or IT band is weakness at the hip, the external rotators, which is like the glute max and some of the other rotators of that hip, can oftentimes be a little weaker on that side compared to the other side. There's some mobility or range of motion deficits going on either at the hip or at the ankle. So we see those impairments quite a bit when we're looking at the knee and some things that are going on at the knee as far as pain and dysfunction. Rarely is there knee pain that's caused by a traumatic. Of course, you can have a traumatic event. Something runs into it, you injure the knee. But if you're having pain at the knee, more times than not, it's usually below it or above it. So I want to get that across. And the next one is plantar fasciitis, which I'm sure most of you guys have heard what this is. It's common in runners, but you don't have to be a runner to get it. Essentially, as you can see, what the fascia is, just like the IT band almost, it's just this thick connective tissue spanning up even beyond the heel and into the balls of the feet. And so it helps support the arch. And then anytime, with plantar fasciitis, the most common cause is if it's just prolonged compression or load through that joint, and especially after periods of inactivity or relative inactivity. So for example, like if you're going from a couch to running a 5K, that's a risk factor there. Or if you're going from the couch, don't have a job or not doing much activity, to getting a job like on your feet, like a server or something like that, for the standing long periods of time after lots of rest. So that's a risk factor there. Just like the knee pain stuff, some other risk factors that we see that correlate with plantar fasciitis and the impairments that we see are limited ankle range of motion, dorsiflexion, which is the ability to kind of move that foot up towards your shin. We see a lot of times that can be restricted, as well as the great toe, or big toe, into extension like that. Sometimes you can have some limitations there as well, and even some stiffness into the soleus or the calf muscles. So with that being said, in addition to all those risk factors, you can go to the next slide. Some of the most common causes to these injuries we see, and I see a lot, are what we call training errors. So what I mean by training errors is kind of how one programs their activity. So how much are you doing, or when are you doing it, and that type of thing. So in addition to those things and those risk factors that we'll address here in a second again, those tend to be the most common causes that we see. So for example, just like the plantar fasciitis case, so if someone's running quite a bit and they're increasing their mileage week over week, just a tremendous amount, that's a lot of volume at one time. So it's just too much demand for the capacity of the tissues at that time to heal. And so our bodies are really extremely adaptable, right, and robust. We adapt to the stresses that we place on them. However, adaptation only occurs when we allow the appropriate amount of rest. And oftentimes people don't, and that's part of the programming, is not giving the right amount of stimulus, the right amount of rest to allow those adaptations to occur to that training program, right? And so we see that often and all the time. And then the next slide here is my kind of must-dos for running. And you might hear a lot, you might even think that, oh, I'm a runner, they need to stretch, right? We need to stretch, constantly stretch, which in some cases stretching is appropriate, but a lot of times people forget to strengthen. I think that's the most important factor that you can consider, is to strengthen. Most people kind of underdose their strengthening. And why is that important, right? So must do is warm up, strengthen, go on to the next slide. why runners need to strength train. So if you consider what even running is essentially it's a single leg activity. Most of the time we're on one leg, right? But it's really kind of this graceful, controlled falling, right? If you think about it, when we're running on one leg, we're stopping, we're falling, catching ourselves, and going, right? So it's a very demanding activity, right? It's believed, I want to say, the research tells us that when we run, we're kind of exerting up to six to 8 times our body weight on certain structures of our body every time we run. So that's why it's really important to get stronger, right? Our bodies need to be able to handle those stresses for our bones, for our muscles, for our ligaments. And so mentioning kind of running as this graceful falling, I kind of make it super simple and break up running into 2 phases. And that's like a propulsion phase, right? We're propelling ourselves forward, and a braking phase. So we're propelling and then we're stopping and braking repeatedly over and over and over again. So it would make sense and it would be wise to incorporate exercises that literally mimic those 2 phases, would it not? And so we want to be able to, like I said, get stronger so we can handle those loads. And so with that, I'm going to go into some 5 exercises that I believe are like some of the most helpful. Again, there's thousands of different exercises that you can do for strengthening. So here, I'm going to give pretty much 5 variations and show you guys, and you guys can even participate if you want. But some of the exercises that could be really helpful for running. And a lot of them are going to be, as you see, you can go to the next slide. They're going to be a lot of single leg stuff, right? As I mentioned, running is this single leg activity. So when we're loading and strengthening single leg, that's what you're going to see here. So the first one that I have, go ahead, is a step up variation, right? So again, here's a step here. I'm going to demonstrate. And so you can do this tons of different ways. You can make it as high as you want. You can add weight or add load. So you're just going to do a step up here, right? And as you can see, you're on one leg at a time, right? So you got the propulsion phase up. Get it in the view of the, there we go. Thanks, Chris. So we're propelling ourselves up, right? And so going up. And then we're also braking as we go down. And so like I said, if that gets pretty easy, you can add weight onto those things. I want to mention too, before the next slide, adding a lateral component or a lateral step up. So instead of going forward here, go to the side, because when we're running, most of the time we run in a straight line, but when we're running and on one leg, there's actually our bodies. Our bodies want to kind of turn and rotate as we run too. We call it frontal plane, which is moving side to side here and rotating in here. So we don't really see those, but we want to work on some of that stability that we need to prevent ourselves from kind of being all wobbly side to side, and that's where that lateral stuff can come in. So a lateral step up, if you're here, step up here. Again, you can't really see this as I'm stepping up, but if I add a weight even, it's going to make it tougher, and my body really kind of wants to, here, like this. So here, sideways, right? Again, I'm going up laterally, but my body wants to do that against gravity. So being able to control that is another variation there that's super important. So the next one is a squat variation, and this is a single leg squat. You can see this is known as the rear foot elevated split squat, also known as a Bulgarian split squat. So having that back foot, there we go. Thank you so much. So again, here, I'll go this direction first, but get somewhere where that foot is elevated and all your weight is kind of really on this leg here. Okay? I'm going to turn for you guys. Here we go. And so again, here, getting most of that load, your single leg again, And depending on where you're holding your weight on either side, you're gonna focus on one part of the leg versus the other, or the hip. So obviously you want to do both sides, and again, you program it and you go up as needed, just depending on what you need and how easy or how hard it is. And so that's number 2. Number 3 is calf raise variation. Now we call this the prisoner calf raise, and so this is actually I think it was Chris Johnson. He's a physical therapist and he's a runner as well. He's pretty well known. He came up with this, but essentially, what's the best way to show you guys here? So what you want is you want your foot up here, hands back here. Now the goal is to kind of be really as tall as you can, and all my weight is going to be on this back leg, right? And I'm going to go up, control, down. Again, I'm trying to go as vertical and as long, as stiff as I possibly can be here, right? And so again, there's really no weight on this front leg, right? And so the goal is, again, to be long, be tall. So when we're running, right, if you ever seen anybody that's just running and they're just kind of flopping, all over the place, there's not really that control there, that stiffness. Really, it's basically gravity in the ground that's really just kind of pulling them down. So this kind of helps to kind of open up, stand tall, be stiff, be strong. And so we got that variation. And then the soleus, which is another important part of the calf, which I'll demonstrate here. What you can do is get on a step, again like that, and you're going to bend your knees a little bit. You can do one leg. What that's going to do is going to get just a different part of the calf. Again, you can add weight to it as it's easier, but the soleus and the gastroc kind of form into what we call the Achilles tendon, right? So the soleus is probably the most important calf muscle in running. And so what we do see in the research is that people with plantar fascia or issues with their foot there, oftentimes there's a weak link in the soleus too. So again, it's important, right? Because we're propelling ourselves. So we want to have strong calves, strong legs as well. So the next one is hip flexor strengthening. So I see so many times, so many runners are constantly stretching. Have you guys, anybody in here are watching that they've constantly stretched, especially their hip flexors? That's probably one of the most well-known muscles amongst runners, that you constantly stretch that area, but it never seems to kind of loosen up or always feels tight. So I hear that a lot. Like, I stretch all the time. I got to keep stretching. But what we see a lot is that it doesn't need to be stretched. It actually needs to be strengthened. But it just feels tight. So muscles can give off the perception of being tight just because maybe they're working a little harder, a little extra hard. And so that sensation just, intuitively we think we need to stretch it out. But in reality, strengthening is most beneficial in that case. And so, for example here, the elevated psoas march, I'll grab a band. As you can see in the picture, by the way, these are not my photos. I found all of these on Google, so I don't own these. Yeah, well, that's okay. I'm going to get on the floor. You guys can see me, but I'm going to demonstrate here. And you can get your foot elevated, but what you can do here, you can do it without a step, but bridging up, bringing that band forward, right? You're adding resistance here at the hip. Okay, and you can do that to both sides. You don't have to elevate here, but this is a great core exercise in addition to the hip flexors and the hip extensors in the back. So it's a great exercise. Best bang for your buck to kind of incorporate core, hip flexors, and hip extensors here that are super important as well. And so the last one is kind of a full body exercise. Again, so when we're running, right, we need strong muscles, we need strong bones, like we need to load our body. Our gravity is pulling us down repeatedly over and over again. So You can get super creative with loaded carries, get the heaviest weight that you can tolerate, and you can do so many different things. That weight is pulling you down, right? And so we call that axial loading. So strengthening, again, the bones, the muscles, the joints. Grab some weight. You can do marches here. You can do marches on the toes. You can hold them up here on your shoulders. You can squat down and do some like toe walks, Soleus walks, but just really grabbing the heaviest weight that you can get, again, to get stronger, to be able to kind of withstand those forces that you're just pounding all day long. And I did want to leave about 5 minutes or so if anyone had any questions. By the way, these types of things do happen as far as the injuries, even without running. They're not exclusive to running. And so if you're not a runner, but you feel like you're having some knee pain or some plantar fascia pain or issues, you can still come see me or one of us and we get that addressed for you. But it doesn't have to be just for runners. But these are the ones we most commonly see, or I most commonly see in the clinic when I'm treating anybody. So does anybody have any questions? That's kind of what I wanted to get through today. Go ahead.
How would you approach a case with someone who has chronically tight hip flexors that are weak, but they're tight because they sit all day long, every day, and so those hip flexors are naturally just shortening?
Yeah.
And so there's that lengthen component, but it's also weak. How would you approach that?
Absolutely. So it all comes down to the assessment. You know, that's where it matters. So obviously getting their history, but doing an assessment and actually testing the length of the hip flexor, which I'm sure you know the modified Thomas test. We demonstrated that in here last month, but there's ways that we can kind of get you on a table and look at the length of that muscle, not just the hip flexors, the iliopsoas, but also that rectus femoris, and see how that is. Because yes, you can have a short muscle like he was alluding to, Dr. Dyllon, and it be weak. Oftentimes we think our muscles are tight, they're really strong, but that's not often the case. We call that active insufficiency. It's really short, but it can be weak too. So yeah, we would check to actually see the length side to side. Sometimes it can be both, sometimes it could be one. And if there is a true shortening of that muscle, then we want to work on the mobility first. Kind of how I approach everything. Not including here when I'm talking about the context of that person, the biopsychosocial side of things, but objectively and biomechanically, I look at what's their mobility look like, what's their range of motion look like, or muscle length, and then we address that, try to normalize it side to side, and once it's there, we lock it in place with stability or stabilizing that area, and then once it's kind of good to go, you can move it really well, then we can kind of get back, reset it in a sense, and load it and get it stronger again. That's how I would go about it. Long answer, short answer, long. Yeah, cool. So, good question. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
What are some good tips on sleep?
That's a great question. That's an awesome question. Great tips on sleep. I love that you asked that because it's actually I try to make it one of my main pillars because I think sleep is so underrated. And it's so helpful. So this can be a really long answer, but consistency is the big thing. So avoiding things like, for one, caffeine or even alcohol after a certain period of time. Any kind of something that's going to keep you awake, right? Try to keep that earlier on in the day or the night. And then consistency, trying to practice good sleep hygiene. So avoiding any distractions, setting your room to a certain temperature, going to bed at the same time. Those types of things really do help. That's probably where I would start. If somebody is still having issues sleeping, then that's probably going to take a deeper dive into figuring out why. Hold on, let me get Tonya real quick. I'll come back to you. Oh, yourself.
What's your goal time on Sunday?
Oh, my goal time. So this is my first half. Originally I was just trying to finish, and now I'm trying to get sub 2 hours. But honestly, it kind of depends on where I'm at. So like a sub 2 hour is going to be somewhere a little over 9 minutes a mile. So if I'm like at 9:03, 9:04, I'm trying to shoot under 9 minutes a mile. So that's the goal.
Yeah, 9:03, 9:04, you're sprinting.
I'm sprinting. I'm going for it. So, so that's my goal. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I have a friend from Kansas City. Actually, he's been training. He's flying down and running it with me. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited for it. So, did you have another question, or were you just saying that was you? That.
No, I was pointing.
Oh no.
So my biggest question is, do you have any advice on programming your sleep routines? Like, I actually have alarm clocks.
Yeah.
So I wake up to a voice memo. I have my bedtime set to a voice memo. So it's sort of just like relaxed message. It tells me what I need to do and all that stuff. Do you have any good tips for like conditioning in that regard? Because my biggest thing is the ADHD.
Yeah.
Consistency is the biggest thing for working out and going to sleep.
Yeah.
So it's so hard.
So you're asking to you're asking how do you say it one more time?
Routine tips. Routine tips. Waking up, going to sleep, or working out.
Yeah, I mean, working out is another one. I recommend not doing it too late or close to your bedtime too. Yeah, because that can keep you wired up as well. Yeah, so that's what I say, and just try to be consistent as possible with it. That's really the only thing that I would suggest. Again, there's probably a number of different things, but I would just try those things that I mentioned. I don't know if you're doing those already. Yeah, and just I think eventually the more consistent you are with it, the more you're just going to kind of naturally, you might not even need the alarm clocks, and your circadian rhythm will just kind of, yeah. So I would just say try to remove those things and be consistent with it and see how that goes. So that's a good question. Anybody else?
I got one.
All right. Yeah.
So people who sleep with their hip flexors flex, can it cause problems in the long term?
Honestly.
So one asked about sleeping with your knee to chest kind of situation, like with your hip flexors up.
I would say not that solely alone. I wouldn't say there's any really evidence to that. Again, if you're just kind of constantly, you're a couch potato, and you're maybe sitting all day sleeping like that, I would say I think there's way too many factors that go into something like that. The nervous system is kind of an amazing, crazy thing. So I say that alone is not like a single risk factor, because I sleep like that all the time, for the longest I can remember. My knees are pretty in the fetal position, So I think there's a lot of different factors for that, for sure. Good question. Anybody else? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you so much. And if you guys have any questions later on, you can ask Chris, everybody at Best Day, or reach out to me personally, Purpose Physical Therapy. But thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Chris, I have a question for you.
Yes, you have a question for me?
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, you guys. I turned it down so there's gonna be a lot. My bad. Good job, buddy. Thanks, man. Sound all right?
It's doing awesome. I'm back in the back to check the audio. I'm going to stop recording and start recording.
I like that, but it'll be short and chairs.
Oh, I'm next?
You're next.
I'm next?
Yep.
That's so good.
Oh, I gotta mic you up.
My friend Jason will be wandering in the back door in a little bit.
Boyer?
Oh my God,
No.
Oh, I'm totally fine. Are they on now?
Good.
You don't have to flip anything?
Nope. No flippage. You're good.
Testing, testing.
All right, we got Tonya on set. Dr.
All right,
Tonya in the
let's
house.
check my pants. All right, I'm good. Okay, we're gonna do this, people. Everybody get up. Upsy daisy. Everybody up. Just real quick, because you've been sitting for a half hour, so let's just ass to grass. Just see what you got for squat. 3, 4, 5. Okay. Shake it out. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, great. All right, sit back down. I'm going to set my timer because y'all probably know me by now. Or if you don't, you're going to figure this out. Let's see. Timer. And just a second. It's I'm having technical difficulties.
That's okay.
I might need an assistant up here. Why is this not working? Click on timer numbers to pause, resume. Everybody talk amongst yourselves. Hey Ken, where are you at? Will you make this work? Yes. Please? I'm gonna start talking because we all know me. Well, if you don't know me already, you're gonna know me. Okay, so am I in a good spot, Chris?
You're in the best spot.
All right, so I'm Dr. Tonya, and I have been collaborating out of this space for what, 2 years or so? Chris and I met at a health fair at a brewery a couple years ago. We had like a lot of similar thoughts with regard to how to do things. Oh, looky. Yay, he made it! A friend of mine just made it. So I actually have my own out-of-network physical therapy practice. It's called Centaur Physical Therapy. I sort of niche down into horses and riders, but I do see patients out of here and collaborate with the trainers and all that. Jason, we have a special spot for you right here, right up front there, buddy. And yeah, I think that's enough. I've been living in Florida for 5 years. I don't know. I like all of this stuff. So let me know if I did okay with choosing the color scheme. I wanted to choose close to the best day blue. Am I close? A little bit? Okay, very good. All right, let's move. So I'm going to be talking all things squat, but kind of what you learned from Dr. Ken is that we only have 30 minutes, and everything we're doing in these workshops is really kind of a survey. So I'm going to do everything I can to stay on task, to stay on point. I actually teach for a PT program up in Knoxville, and we actually have signals for the adjunct faculty who are in the audience. If Tonya starts twirling her hair, the instructor needs to wrap it up. So little signals. Anyhow, so we kind of talked a little bit about the knee last time, and a little bit mentioned squats, but I just wanted to start kind of unpacking the squat itself, because it's, in my opinion, and actually in reality, the squat is an absolutely essential movement no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing. Because no matter who you are, no matter what you're trying to do. Because what does this look like?
Pooping?
It could be pooping. And what do you poop on in America?
A seat.
A seat attached to what?
I hope you're not shitting on a seat.
A toilet. And what else are we on a lot of times? What else? A chair. If you're not able to get on and off the toilet or on and off a chair, can you live alone without assistance? No. And I know I'm fast forwarding quite a bit. Most people think the folks who can't squat or sit are old, but that's not necessarily the case. So actually one of the most predictive variables, oh my God, I'm off track already. One of the most predictive variables of whether or not you can live alone is the strength of your quads, because you need to be able to, what? And then stand. So this is gravity, so you can just fall gracefully into the chair, but if you can't stand back up, you're hosed. And then if we want to dovetail back to what Dr. Ken was talking about, if you can't controlled fall and have enough strength, you're hosed. And that's all these muscles here. So let's go to the next slide so I can remember what I'm supposed to be talking about. I gave myself a little cliff notes here. We're going to talk about basic anatomy, physics, don't get scared, basic physics, hip and quad dominant movement patterns, the depth of the squat, and the purpose of squats. So any of you, my goal for y'all at the end, by the end of this, is to not only understand the squats from a functional perspective, but also understand the ways that you can modify squats according to an impairment or something that you see. So if somebody is having trouble sitting on the toilet or standing up, or if they're having range mobility issue, there are things you can tweak in the squat that can be your best bang for your buck, where you can be working on strength, range of motion, mobility, and function all at the same time, which is why I love the squats. Because Dr. Ken, what was his squat? The Bulgarian split squat? That's fantastic. It's isolating, it's super strengthening. So let's move. We've got a beautiful example of a nice deep squat here in this photo. Just from a cursory view of a squat, there's some things that you want to turn your eyes towards. In this particular deep squat, her ankles we're looking at her ankle mobility, which is, her ankle is directly connected to the calf. So if you're able to get that low, that means your calf muscles are long enough to allow your ankle to move enough to accommodate that motion. The knee, could the knee bend anymore? Nope. Nope. It's maximally bent, so we're getting full range. And the hip, how much more did that hip do you think that can bend? She's got her belly right up against her thigh. So she's got full range of the hip, full range of the knee, a lot of range in the ankle, and then her arms are forward, and that's kind of a cantilevering kind of movement, which is something we do. I tripped. What just happened? I lost my balance. My hands went where? Out, the high guard position. And so she's also, that indicates that that is a balance and proprioception movement. So the squat is super powerful, and here's my biggest pet peeve with personal training, exercise training, physical therapy, all the things. Everyone is seduced by the new and shiny thing. People overlook the power of the squat because it's boring. It's not sexy. It's not fancy. It doesn't have bells and whistles. Some fancy person isn't selling it. There's not a big price tag on it. You can't get certified in squats. Well, you should be able. We should be, actually, as a matter of fact. So so when you look at a squat, you're going to be looking at what? Ankle, knee, hip, and torso. And you don't have to have a doctorate in physical therapy to be able to actually have a discriminating eye. So just focus on those sorts of things, and we'll kind of walk through a little bit as we go. So next slide. Now we're going to talk about the anatomy. I'm doing basic anatomy. There are a lot more muscles we can talk about, but I'm just going to go with the glutes. The glute maximus on the left-hand side here. You can see that the fibers are a little bit oblique. So meaning this is like straight up and down. They're a little bit oblique, but the main thing that the glute max does is extend the hip. And this is the easiest way to see that. The hip is going back. That's extending the hip. But guess what? This is extending the hip. So think about in context what the muscle is doing. Just because it looks different doesn't mean it's not doing the exact same thing in a different position. The glute medius, we talked about a little bit last time with regard to how it affects the knee, but you can see that's a little bit more out to the side and still has a little bit of an angulation. And so its primary movement is bringing your leg out to the side. There's a little bit of external rotation, but we'll just say abduction for glute medius. And so the glute max does what? Extends the hip. Okay, very good. So let's move to the next slide. Now we have the hamstrings on the left-hand side here. They're the muscles in the back of your leg. The primary movement of the, I didn't say put the movement there, I put the muscle names because there's a lot of them. The hamstrings consist of the semitendinosus, the semimembranosus, and the biceps femoris. You don't need to remember any of that, but you just have to remember that the main action of the hamstrings is to flex your knee. So bending your knee. So we'll just table that and I'll explain what that means in the squat in a minute. And the quadriceps is that muscle, it's the pooping muscle. No, anyhow, the muscle is on the front of your leg. And that's 4 muscles, the rectus femoris, which is the only one that crosses both the hip and the knee. That is the one that is the most forgotten, the most misunderstood, the most not addressed, and the one that if you manage appropriately, you can really improve a lot of function strength, reduce the risk for injury, help people heal from injury, yada, yada, yada. So just really being aware, the rectus femoris, if it crosses the hip and makes the hip flex, what is it then? It's a hip flexor, but the rectus femoris ends on the other side of your kneecap, on your lower leg bone. So if it gets shorter, it makes your knee go what? Straight. So it's a hip flexor and a knee extensor. So rectus femoris is a super powerful and important muscle. And then the other quadriceps are vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedius. Blah, blah, blah. Next. Okay, a little bit of physics because I'm going to get you guys up moving and shaking in a little second here. So I just realized that kind of looks like a, no, not a hoof, an ostrich. It looks like an ostrich foot. I hadn't thought about that. Well, anywho, it kind of, yeah, it does look like a hind limb. It does look like a hind limb. Regardless. So the force, if anyone remembers from physics, force vectors is the force that's going along in accordance to gravity. So gravity is perpendicular from up there to down there, right? Gravity goes straight up and down. And then depending on what you're doing, your body part is going to be trying to go towards the ground because that's where gravity is pulling. So if your bone is at a slope, it's going to be going towards the ground in accordance with that slope. So a force vector is just how that bone is trying to, how the energy is going with gravity. So if we look at the femur, which is that top bone on the top there, and if you just draw that, if you draw the arrow straight down, this one here is curved because it's in context with the tendon. But if we just extended this line straight out, you would see where that femur is going. So it's going this direction. And then the lower leg bone is also going to go forward as well because of its inclination. So if the lower leg bone is going forward, it's going to tip towards the ground as well. So just understanding the force vectors. So your femur is going this way and your tibia is going the same way or the different way depending on how it's loaded. So let's just switch to the next. So angle of the tibia, which is your lower leg bone, is another something to pay attention to when you're looking at the squat. So if your tibias, your lower leg bones, are coming way far forward like this, that's really something you want to look at when you're learning to discriminate the type of squat that somebody is doing and how you can modify and improve it in accordance with whatever is going on with that human or whoever it is. So if the tibia is not going forward, that's a whole other situation. So let's switch to the next slide. Okay, here we are. Quad dominant or hip dominant patterns. This is what everyone who does squats, or everyone who watches anyone do a squat, or anyone who has anyone do anything that's related to a squat, if you're telling someone to squat when you're whether a personal trainer, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, or just some Joe Schmo off the street telling somebody to squat for exercise, you need to understand the different patterns because you might injure someone. If they're squatting in a quad dominant pattern and they have knee pain, you're effing them up. You are hurting them. And so develop your eye. You don't have to have a doctorate in physical therapy to do this. I just want you all to just gather your thoughts. We've got 2 squats here. So if you're going to look at somebody doing a squat, what are the 3 things you're going to look at the most? 4 things you're going to kind of look at for screening, starting from the ground. You're going to look at their ankle. You're going to look at their knee, and their hip, and then torso. Now, I just added in that last slide, you're also going to look at where's that femur, or the tibia. Where's the lower leg? Is it sloping away forward, or is it more vertical? So those are some of the things that you want to look at. So shin or tibia or lower leg angle. And also, I'll add, where is the torso in relationship to all the other joints? And that'll give you a little bit of an idea of what's happening as far as hip or quad dominant. So on the left-hand side, we have a quad dominant pattern. Take a look at how far those tibias or the lower legs are moving forward. This is quad dominant. Because if you look at me right now, take a look at my hip angle and take a look at my knee angle. What's moving the most? This is a quad dominant movement pattern. What do you think's happening to the knee? Do you think there's a lot? Where are the force vectors? They're like they're perpendicular in the knee. So this is a source of a lot of pain. So let's say we have a tight rectus femoris, which means the tissue that goes across the hip and across the knee is tight. It doesn't have a lot of mobility. So when it gets stretched, it goes over your kneecap. It's going to create a lot more tension, right? Because it's getting stretched. It's like, that's all I got, Captain. So if you're a quad dominant pattern, you're smushing that kneecap because that tissue doesn't have much left to go on, and you're hurting that person. Crush, crush, crush. You're going to create an injury, so Tonya's got something to do with that patient. Please don't do that. So what did we look at for that quad dominant pattern? What are the tells? Explain that in a way that people can see. How do you know they're initiating with the knee?
Knee moves before the hips.
Let's be a little more specific in the language that I've used. Which bone goes forward? So the knee actually is a hinge joint, so it's actually kind of not going anywhere. It's sort of caught between your femur and your tibia. So if I'm doing a quad dominant pattern, who's moving forward? Come on. Yeah, there you go. The lower leg, if the lower leg bone is coming forward a lot in front of the toes, we have a what dominant pattern? Is that healthy for the knees? Not necessarily, not at all. So if we look at the hip dominant pattern, which is, we've got these big, huge, massive glute maximus, and its main job is to do what? Extend the who? Extend the what joint? There you go. So extending the hip is what the glute maximus is supposed to be doing. If you're sitting back, like you're going to sit into a chair and you're using a glute dominant pattern, where are my tibias going? They're staying vertical, so the knee can be in a hinge joint like it's meant to happen, and you're taking a lot of the pressure off the knee. So everybody stand up. And let's practice the 2 patterns so you feel it. So, hands on hips. Put your feet at anatomical hip width apart, which is kind of bikini line down is where your hips are. The middle bikini line, that's your hip joint right there. So don't do this because that's just not right. Okay, now, feet on the floor, hands. Drive your knees forward. Where are you feeling the stress? The front of your knees. Where else? Because depending on your anatomy, you're going to feel it different places. How about you? Calves. Calves? Because the calves are attached to what joint? Yeah, so that tells me something about your ankle. Anyone else? Feeling it different places? Quads. You feeling it in your quads? Ooh, well that's magical. It's a quad dominant pattern. So if you get confused and you're trying to figure something out, just do the thing. And feel it in your own body, because you're in your body all the time. You know what's going on. Okay, so now, arms forward to counterbalance. Sit your butt back. And now see how you feel. Hang out here for a second or two. Right? What did that just show us? He lost his... So what are we working at in addition to strengthening? Balance and proprioception. If you're losing your balance when you're doing it, you're working on your balance, right? But yes, you got ahead of me. What other muscles are happening here? Is it just your hip? So everyone stay in your... Look at everyone to parallel. Okay, thighs to parallel is the goal. Butt back. Oh my God. I think everyone in this room is almost thighs to parallel. What kind of function is this? That's a funk super. Now, let's hang out here for a second. Where are you getting tired? Quads. Okay. Now stand up. And then sit back down. And now stand back up really fast. Sit down. Stand up super fast. Which muscle is working? Yeah. So if you get confused as to what you're doing, so if you do this really fast, okay, now do the knees forward fast. Well, for one, can you go as far? No. And now what do you feel if you do it a bunch of times, really deep? You're feeling it in your knees. So if you don't remember anything I talked about, just try it and you'll remember what I talked about. So let's go to the next slide. Let's see what I was talking about. So now this gives us a little bit of, now we can kind of think about the choosing of the depth of the squat based on whatever your goals are, or whatever impairment or difficulty the person is having. So the full squat, ass to grass, deep squat, that is doing what to all your hip, knee, and ankle? The range of motion is as much as it can go, or as little as it can go? Super flexed, super improving range of motion, super improving your mobility, and getting in and out of that place is also strengthening, challenging your balance and proprioception because of how the movement pattern works. Now, if we go into the half squat, the thighs parallel, it's actually a little bit more balance challenging because because once you get here, your calves and the back of your thighs are touching each other and they're balancing you. So if you're halvesies here, you're able to challenge balance proprioception and you're working your way into the deep squat. So if somebody can't deep squat, do you just not squat? No, you just modify the squat so they can work their way towards it. Because being able to sit up and down without help is the predictive variable for being able to do what? Yeah, and so the health you have when you're in your 50s directly correlates to the health that you're going to be in your 80s. Let's see what's next. Ooh, purpose. Yes, very good. I'm not super off track. This is great. So when you're looking at squats, you want to be considering all of the variables. And you don't have to have a huge understanding of anatomy. You just have an understanding of what it is that you're looking at and what it is that you're trying to do. So if a person has a hard time getting up and down off of a chair, do you go directly to a deep squat? Would that be easier or harder for them to do? Super hard, but would you completely avoid it? No, because that's ultimately a goal. So let's play with modifying our squats a little bit. Everyone, let's see, let's grab, we have some weighted barbells along the line there. We got a couple of PVC pipes here. And then I'm going to hand out a few of these because this is where you can get the most bang for your buck is by holding on to something when you're doing a squat. So big, strong people everybody grab something to stick behind your head. Let's see, what else do we have? A bar, if possible, because here you go. Try this one. Because it changes your torso angle quite significantly. All right, we got one more of these. Who doesn't have one? Here you go. And then I'll expect you all to share and share alike. Oh. Just a second. Talk amongst yourselves. Who gets this one? Sweet. No, this is perfect because the chair wouldn't work. It's not about weight. All right, people, let's play with this. I'm all about bang for buck. If you're doing one exercise and you're working on strength, mobility, range of motion, which is the same as mobility, balance and proprioception, is that a super powerful movement to do? You get your money's worth? Hell yeah. Okay, so we've got, if you have the shoulder range of motion available behind your head, like resting on your upper traps or your shoulders, now try to squat down and see what happens. How does that change it? Now do it slow and observe your body. Where are you feeling the extra strain? Say it loud and proud. Your back muscles, because what is this making you do? Extend your torso. And then what else? Someone else mentioned it a little while ago. What muscles are on the other side of your back? So if your back muscles are tight, then the muscles on the other side of your back, otherwise known as your abdominals, they're working too. So now we can get more bang for our buck. We've got mobility, balance, strengthening, range of motion, and getting off the toilet so you can live longer by yourself. And then if we want to add even more functionality, whoo, holy heck, now we got your upper extremities involved. And our upper extremities are connected directly to your low back. So squat it up, buttercups, and then so an overhead press. And then down. And it's important, I see, so it's a variation where you keep your arms up is targeting tissues a little bit differently, but that can be a variation based on what it is that your goal is. But keeping the bar on your shoulders as you're descending fosters more core and spine extensors. So here we are, overhead press. Does anyone feel, anyone feeling this? Different? Okay, now put it in front, just for fun. Funsies. And see how that's different. Oh my God, what was I immediately able to do more of? You're able to get deeper, right? Because you're doing a little bit more core. Here it's core and back at the same time, but because of the pull of gravity and the force vectors, you're able to go deeper. And then whoop. Oh my God, everyone's doing amazing. This is fantastic. And so this can turn into all kinds of things. So I would encourage, so just to recap, when you're looking at somebody perform a squat, what are we scanning for? We're looking at their mobility, right? And you're testing their strength by which is harder, which requires more strength. Going low and standing back up, or doing a tiny one? So if somebody can get low, what does that tell us? It tells us that the person has good mobility, and if they can stand back up, they have fairly decent strength. Now if they get stuck down here, they probably have good mobility, and they're missing a little bit of strength. So those are some of the things to kind of consider when you're looking at having somebody do squats. I know they're not sexy, but you can make them fun, I tell you that much. Okay, go to the next slide. There you go. Sweet, oh my God. I didn't go over. Yes. Okay, I actually have time for questions. Okay, who's got questions, comments, concerns, revelations?
What's your take on knees coming in?
What is my take on the knees coming in? Somebody who was here last time can tell us what my take is on that. What happens when your knees are coming in?
Rotation. Moving your joint
You're moving your joint in a way it's not supposed to. The knee is a hinge joint. It's made to bend and straighten only. If there's any rotation added into the knee, you're going to cause injury. So that's a really great question. So what do you think that tells us about the person's ability to squat? If those knees crash in, what helps the knees stay outward? Your muscles, not a bone, correct? So that would tell you it's a mobility issue, a balance and proprioception issue, strength issue. Yeah, so you would be targeting the muscles that help your knees go out. When your knees are going out, your hip is going out. Does anyone remember which muscle does that primarily from the beginning? Way at the beginning? Yeah, gluteus medius, absolutely. So that would be, if you're crashing in like this, we're looking at glute med strengthening in accordance with the squat, so that you're training those muscles to contract in the pattern that they need to, because you don't just do one muscle at a time in any functional activity whatsoever, unless you're just like sticking your tongue out at someone. But no, you're still using a bunch of other muscles. Okay, what other questions? Comments, concerns, injuries that you've had. Oh, so sorry.
To do the different types of squats we're talking about, should we be able to do both those types of squats?
Okay, the question is, with regard to the different types of squats that we talked about, the thighs parallel and the ass to grass or the full deep squat, should you be able to do both? What do you think the answer is ideally, outside of hip pathology? Yes, you want to have the ability to do both, because the deep squat means that you have full range of motion and strength enough, because what's the next phase of the deep squat? I'm on the ground, hanging out. If I can't get up off the ground, am I safe? Am I functional? Exactly. I need to call for help. You'd be shocked. I've actually, and part of the reason why I talk about being able to get up off the floor, and thank you so much for bringing me kind of into that vein of thinking, is I had, back when I lived in Carmel, California, oh my God, it was amazing, like back in 2013, I had a 50-year-old woman, which is not old, by the way, a 50-year-old woman who had had a very active lifestyle, and she was a little bit out of shape because she'd had some stuff going on. And this is embarrassing to me, but I'm going to fully confess it, I had her do something where she kneeled down onto the ground, and she was not able to get up. And I was absolutely flabbergasted. And I'm like, go ahead and stand up. And she's like, I can't. And I was just like, oh, we got some work to do. But I was just mortified that I hadn't picked up on that, because I'd seen her a few times and I should have been able to screen for that. So do you think a 50-year-old woman should be able to get up and down off the floor? Do you think as you get weaker, Anyway, yeah, right? You know, a 70-year-old person wants to play with the grandkids or whatever that is. So so thank you for bringing me down that rabbit hole. So, and what else? Go ahead.
What is the best squat variant to get like dummy thick?
So the question was, what is the best squat variant to get dummy thick, is what he said. Dummy thick. So do you think there's one squat? If we look at the glute max, which does primarily hip extension, and then we have the glute medius, which does hip abduction, do you think there's one exercise that's the main one? No, because you got to use them all. So if you want to get dummy thick, did you say dummy thick?
Yeah, dummy thick.
Okay, if you want to build your squats, and if you want to build your glute complex, you need to challenge hip extension in a variety of ways, from different angles in a variety of ways. and different loads. And they could have a whole nother conversation about type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers and all that kind of thing. But there is not one best, but there is many, you need to do more. A variety of squats will be the best thing to focus on that glute complex. Anything else? I think okay, I'm done. Wait, one more time. Upsy doodles. Squat it down, people. Squat like you mean it. There you go. So yes, all the way down. This is fantastic. What do we just chat? What are we working on? Strength, mobility, balance, proprioception. Heck yeah. Okay. Good. Hey yeah.
I think you're sweating.
I'm sweating. This is why it's 50 degrees in here, people.
We got Dr. Dyllon. You guys could bring it down a notch. All right, Dr. Dyllon's about to get on now. If you guys want to cease your conversations-ish. Whoa.
We got Dr. Dyllon coming on.
There we go. Test, test. Cool. Good spot here? Beautiful. Ready? You guys are beautiful. Dr. Tonya, thank you for the movement, getting us out of our seats a little bit, getting ourselves moving. My name's Dr. Dyllon. I am the owner of The Source Chiropractic. We are a holistic chiropractic healing center. We're right around the corner on 25th and 1st Ave North.
My wife and I just moved out here from Oakland, California, and because all of you guys are new to me, I'd like to start with a little bit of my story. That sound good? Cool. So I grew up in West Palm Beach. Grew up with just a family that is Florida locals, rather rare these days. And when I was in high school, my dad started having low back pain, mid back pain. Super common. We grew up in a home that owns a family business, landscaping, lawn maintenance. Always watched dad working with his hands. Kind of made sense. He got tired of coming home and stretching, and like things not really making sense. Finally, my mom was like, listen, there's this chiropractor. I hear he's really good. We should go get you checked out. Roll back the story a little bit, and 9 months prior to my dad going in to see this chiropractor, he was diagnosed with what they call type 1.5 diabetes. Before you freak out and you're like, type 1, type 2, what the hell is type 1.5? Essentially what it is it's an autoimmune diabetes that happens later on in life. So we know that we have like kids that have diabetes, that autoimmune issue, they've got the autoimmune markers, and then we have more of the late onset, which is from lifestyle. We grew up eating well. We grew up in a family that cooked dinner every night. We didn't eat out very often. There was definitely some sodas and some sugars and, you know, the ice pops and all that throughout our life, but we weren't a really unhealthy family. And actually what was ironic was the summer leading into my dad discovering he was diabetic, he was dropping all of this weight, had endless energy, was like eating ice cream every night, looking better than ever. He was loving it until his eyesight started to go. And it started to go fast. And we were like, what's going on? This isn't making sense. Had some bouts of things that we now discovered was extremely high blood sugar. Ended up in the hospital with blood sugar at 425. You guys obviously know that that is extremely high, very dangerous, which is why his eyesight was going really quick. They were obviously like, listen, you're diabetic, we got to figure this out. Took months to get insulin levels stable. When you go through this process, it's stressful. It's hard. The whole family has to change their lifestyle. Dad has to start taking shots every day. We go from like a family that never really had any chronic illness or sickness in the family to this new paradigm, and it was scary. Fast forward, 9 months later, we're in the chiropractor's office. 3 months before getting in the chiropractor's office, everything was stable with his blood. Insulin levels were good. He was taking his shots. He was taking his slow acting. His units were stabilized. Everything was cush and kosher. The docs basically told him, there's nothing you can do about this. Just get used to the shots, get used to this lifestyle, you know, live comfortably, but there's not much you can do. My mom at the time was a little bit more into holistic stuff, and she was like, I feel like there could be something, but we didn't really have an answer. So now my dad's in the chiropractor office for mid and low back pain, okay? That's all he was in for. A month of being in care, my dad didn't need his shots anymore. Blew our family's mind. We did not understand what was going on. At the time, Dad was seeing the endocrinologist once a month to test levels and stuff. Goes back to the endo. All of a sudden, levels are off and wonky again. He's hardly needing his shots at all. His body's creating insulin. We don't understand what's going on. The endo says, what have you done different? Dad says, I started seeing a chiropractor. I don't know. That's the only thing that's different in my life. Endo says, absolutely unrelated, not possible. There must be something else. Are you changing your diet? Are you changing something? Like, there must be something that can help me to explain this. And he's like, all I've done is started seeing the chiropractor. I've been there for about 3 weeks. Go to the chiropractor, explain this whole situation. This is a type of chiropractor that I now am. This changed my life when I was 15. And the chiropractor really cared about educating his people. And so he sat our whole family down and he explained this simple concept of how the brain controls everything in the body. Nothing fascinating, like super obvious. There is not a single cell inside of your body right now that can function without the nervous system controlling it, telling it what to do. And every cell is sending information back to the nervous system to let the brain know what's going on inside the body. Basically, where he had the biggest issues within his spine was the track where the pancreas communicates to the brain. The brain has to talk to the pancreas to tell the pancreas what to do. Pancreas has to talk to the brain to let it know what it needs. That's how your body's working 24/7. There was enough interference with this area in his body that by getting adjusted, that interference was cleared, the body started communicating with the brain and the brain to the body, and the body started healing naturally. Beautiful. This isn't to say that my dad is fully not diabetic anymore. Now what we've learned is if he's active, if he's eating right, if he's maintaining things that are healthy lifestyles, he can really manage this thing naturally. He doesn't have to take shots anymore. He does still take some slow-acting, I forget what it's called, but the pill that he takes overnight. The units have dropped dramatically. But that whole point of that story was to start off with the concept of how the brain connected to the body can empower the body to heal from things that most of us think are impossible to heal. I know that we've spent a lot of tonight talking about running and squatting and moving your body. Tonight, what I really want to talk about is the thing that I specialize the most in, which is the mind-body connection or the brain-body connection, or the part of you that is like inside this meat avatar controlling everything, and how it actually has perception to the body. Dr. Tonya mentioned something right at the end, and she kind of said it in passing, but she said, all of you are in your body. You know what's going on in there. Bullshit. You only know what's going on inside your body based on what your nervous system can pick up. COVID just went through. What I love about Florida, by the way, is you guys say back during COVID. I moved from Oakland. They're still like in COVID right now. It's fucking hilarious. I'm sorry. But we just went through this virus, going through this virus, and one of the symptoms are you can't smell. Does that mean that if you smell lavender and you can't smell it, that there's not lavender there? No. But your perception is that there's no lavender there. So when you're trying to move your body, or when you're feeling things inside your body, it is all governed by the perception of what's going on inside your body. Your entire life experience happens through your senses. And I don't say your 5 senses because there are more than that. There's at least 6 with the proprioceptive sense. We've talked about it all night. The fact that I know I'm holding up a 5, a 1, a 3. I can feel my fingers in space. That's proprioceptive sense. It's our 6th sense, right? There are all these senses in your body that are telling you what's going on in your life experience. All of these senses are sending information into your body that your brain is receiving. It receives this information through something called the reticular activating system, the RES. Are you familiar? Of course. For real? Tony Robbins, bro. Yo, let's go. Okay. Your reticular activating system is basically the filter. Your brain is constantly filtering out most things because there's so much going on around us. I mean, just think about all of the Wi-Fi in this room. Think about the 3G, the 5G, all of these things that you aren't able to perceive. Your brain's filtering a lot of it out. What's also being filtered out is other sounds, right? Other things that you're all focusing on me, and so you're focusing here. Things and sounds behind you, cars driving by, your brain just shuts it off, right? The reticular activating system, one of the most important parts of this filter is it can be in a survival mode, which is where most people are living, or it can be in a thrival mode. I'm going to use the words survival and thrival because big sciencey words disconnect you from what I'm saying, and I want you guys with me. Survival is your sympathetic nervous system, right? It's your fight or flight, hide. It's a primal part of your nervous system. It comes from evolution. It's how we got to this point. We had to know how to fight, run, or hide from the tiger that wants to eat us. But that red light that's putting you into survival mode is not going to kill you. Your brain doesn't know that. Then there's thrival. The thrival is your parasympathetic, your rest, digest, your heal. let's focus on heal, right? So when your body is in a thrival mode, it's able to constantly heal. Healing is not something that happens just when you're injured. Your body is constantly healing, constantly regenerating. You have millions of cells right now dying, millions of cells right now being reborn. You are an amazing, divine human being that is alive with 7 trillion plus cells all somehow working together. Every single one of you in here are fucking magic. That's insane. And the thing that's controlling all of this is your nervous system. The thing inside of these 7 trillion cells that all behave differently, but also behave the same, that work together to create these sounds, to keep my skin and my insides inside, right? That do all of these different functions. There's something magic inside of you. You can call it energy, you can call it spirit, you can call it soul, you can call it your mind, you can call it whatever the heck you're comfortable calling it, but every single one of you know it's in there, right? You know it's in there, you can feel that it's in there, right? We're in the third dimension, we're in this reality to experience life. How do we experience life? Through our 5 senses. How do we know that our 5 senses are giving us accurate information to life? Well, that has to do with whether or not we're living in a survival dominant sense or a thrival dominant sense. Let's talk about the survival dominant sense. Survival dominance looks a lot like the person that is constantly stressed out, the person that is constantly exhausted, the person that tries to go to bed and can't fall asleep at night because they're anxious, and then wakes up in the morning exhausted, goes through their day, everything's happening to them. They're just kind of out of alignment, and I don't mean the spine. Out of alignment with the energies and the things that are happening in their life, because their perception to life is that everything is trying to kill them. Everything I need to run, fight, or hide from. Most of us are stuck in paralysis, and that's the sense to hide. But the thing is, you can't hide. You still have to go to work. You still have to be a father. You still have to be a mother. You still have to be a friend. You still have to show up in all these different facets of life, and it becomes super hard when you're stuck just trying to survive, or when your nervous system thinks you're stuck just trying to survive. Then you have the thrival mode. The thrival mode is where it doesn't matter what's happening to you, you're good. It bounces off, right? You're adaptable. You're thriving in life. You experience an injury and you're like, okay, let's figure out how I'm gonna work through this injury. You experience stress and you're like, okay, let me understand why this is stressing me. You have a mindset to life where you can approach it a little bit more gently, or maybe a little bit more head on, but you're approaching it in such a way where you are alive, you're well, you're confident, you're in your body, right? That's that parasympathetic tone. We're supposed to be living 80 to 90% of our time in that thrival mode, in that parasympathetic mode. Most of us, most of the people I work with are stuck in survival. They're stuck with that sympathetic tone through the roof. This is why eating, your gut even feels messed up, right? You're stressed out to eat. You're like, you're hungry, you're not hungry. You think you're hungry, you go to eat. You're full after like 3 bites. Where'd my appetite go? Why isn't my appetite working? You're stuck in survival mode. When your body's trying to survive, there's no energy going to your gut. There's not even the normal amount of blood going to the gut because the body's like, yo, we gotta survive. There's a tiger getting ready to eat us. But there's not, because it's the primal brain. The primal brain is one of the lower part of the brains, of the brain centers, lower part of the brain stem. This is part of what we evolved with. As humans, we have a higher brain. We have the prefrontal cortex. We have parts of our brain where we can have these intellectual conversations and start to think about things, right? We also have this part of our nervous system that's called the limbic brain. And the limbic brain is where all your feelings are, right? There's no language that lives in the limbic brain. This is why sometimes you meet people, maybe you're feeling it right now. I like this guy. I trust this guy. I feel connected with this guy. I'm tickling your limbic system, right? And some of you in here are like, son of a bitch, why did he just know that I was thinking that? Right? Because we're connecting. We're human beings. We're able to connect on all of these different wavelengths in all of these different ways. And a lot of it happens with acknowledgement. The first step to healing is acknowledging the depth of who you are, the power that you have to heal, the fact that why you might not be healing is just because you're stuck in survival mode. Survival mode isn't where you heal. It's just not. You've got to get out of survival mode into thrival mode so that your body can start to move in ways, so that your gut can start to digest in ways, so that your mindset can start to relax in ways that allow you to heal. And so this concept empowers every facet of your life. It empowers the way you move. It empowers the way you sleep. It empowers the way you eat. It empowers the way that you listen to people. It empowers the way you connect with people. Because when you're in that thrival mode, you're in your highest self. You're living your best life. You're in that good way. How do you get to the thrival mode? How do you get out of survival mode? How do you start to clear that reticular activating system, which is the filter, and you change that filter from everything's happening to me to, no, I'm a divine, living human being experiencing life and allowing things to happen for me, learning lessons along the way, experiencing all of it, right? This doesn't just mean having every day be a good day. Good and bad is just a judgment. But this doesn't just mean everything being easy. You're not here for life to be easy. Stress builds us up when it's the right stress. We were talking about this in the truck right before we got here. There's eustress and there's distress. Distress breaks you down, tears you apart, causes disconnection, disruption in the system, and eventually dis-ease. This is disintegrated stress. Eustress is a functional squat. That's a stress on my body. If I don't do it, if I don't squat for the next 5, 10, 20 years, I'm not going to be able to get up. If I continually work on a functional squat, I promise you right now, this is recorded, you'll see me doing this at 90 years old. Because age is not the reason why you are sick. Age is not the reason why you're not recovering. Age is not the reason why you can't move. And don't say, oh, you're only 30 years old, you don't know. No, I do know. Because the only thing that should change as you age should be the rate at which you recover. Recovery does slow as you age, but the ability to recover does not. The ability to move does not. The ability to live without disease does not. These chronic diseases that plague our life, that plague our families, that plague our friends, for those of you that are not millennials in here, that plague a lot of the people that you know, it's from lifestyle. It's from living in survival mode, day in and day out, day after day after day. Because when you're in survival mode, you're not worrying about what you're eating. You're not worrying about what kind of information you're taking in. You're not worrying about any of that. You're doing all you can do to survive. And guess what? The easiest way to escape survival mode is to get in your phone and get that dopamine. You get that dopamine hit all day long. Then you put the TV on, you get more dopamine, and you escape, you escape, you escape, you escape. We're here in this life to experience life. We have an opportunity to experience life connected to the nature that we are. And the nature that we are is magical. We all just agreed 7 trillion cells somehow working together to create this thing. Right? And you don't have to think about it. You get a cut on your arm, you don't think about it. Maybe you put a Band-Aid on it. If you're like me, maybe you forget about it. It'll stop bleeding soon. And it closes itself up, and it does it. Magical. Why doesn't the gut heal that way? Why doesn't all of these other parts of our body heal the way that like a child with a cut, and you tell them, hey, it's okay. Just put a Band-Aid on it. Your body will heal. Where did we lose that? We didn't lose that. We just kept attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking, and soldiers on the battlefield can't heal on the battlefield. If your body is constantly in the battlefield, it can't heal in the battlefield. I help people heal by clearing that disconnection. I help people heal by connecting them to the innate healing power that they have inside of their body, that every single one of you have inside your body. A lot of people come through my practice and they call me a healer. They tell me, you're fixing me, you're doing all this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm constantly reminding them, I'm not the healer, I'm not the magical one, I just listen deeply. I listen deeply to what's going on, to how it's affecting you. I acknowledge you to being more than just a stuck hip. I acknowledge how this pain that you're feeling in your low back, how that affects your connection with your kids. How this pain and tension you're feeling in your upper back, how that affects your ability to do the thing that you used to love to do, your job. That now is this thing that is just beating you over against the wall. Because every time you come in, stress, stress, stress. I can't take away the stressors in people's life. What I can do is I can help them become more adaptable. We all have a cup, okay? I want you to visualize a cup within your mindset or your body. That cup can be filled with stress. You can make that cup bigger or smaller. This is like the cup of adaptability, right? The more adaptable you are, the more things you can fill into that cup. When I adjust someone's spine and I remove the interference and I remove the stuck energies, I remove the boggy tissue, I remove the disconnection, the inability to move appropriately, when I remove all of that stress, we make the cup a little bit bigger. When that cup gets a little bit bigger, suddenly the person that has a high-stress job can handle that high-stress job a whole lot more. Crazy. And they think I'm magic. It's just helping you to connect to the depth of what you're actually capable of. And when you remove the stress from your life, that's when you're able to really take these awesome tagline, meme-emoji, mindset things that we all love to double click on Instagram, living your best life and all this. It's so hard to embody that sometimes. And what makes me sad is when I see things launching like the metaverse, where it's just another ability to escape at a deeper level, just another way for people to live more and more disconnected from this amazing human experience that we get to have in the third dimension, with the highs and the lows, with the rough days and the fucking awesome days, to be able to fully embody that, to feel that, to feel what love feels like, to feel what joy feels like, to feel what pain feels like, to feel what mourning and sorrow feels like. This is what it is to be human. This is the life we're allowed to live. It's normal to have some symptoms when you experience a stressor. It's normal to go to the gym, pick some heavy shit up, put it down, and be sore the next day. That's normal. It's not normal to walk around 24/7 with like a little bit of a limp. It's not normal to have a hard time getting in and out of a chair. It's not normal to feel like you can't feel anything because you're so stuck, just feeling scared, stressed, where your emotional bandwidth is stuck right here. And then your partner that you've been with for all these years are like, where are you? Where have you gone? Why aren't we connecting anymore? Well, because both of you are stressed the fuck out. I swear, because this shit's real. And because it matters, and because it gets a little bit of that limbic system firing. You're like, ooh, felt that. All of these things are integrated, controlled, connected, manifested. They're all done by the infinite intelligence of your brain and your nervous system. And the coolest part about it, we know next to nothing about what it can do. What we do know is that the brain is a receiver, right? That's why you can close your eyes. Everyone try this. Close your eyes right now. I want you to go to one of your most cherished memories. Something that makes you just grin from ear to ear. Something that makes you feel warm inside. Something that bursts your heart wide open. Go to that memory. Now feel what you feel in your body. Is there an area somewhere in your body that might be buzzing? Do you feel the muscles in your face wanting to pull back a smile? Do you feel your teeth wanting to show? That's just a memory. That's just a thought. But those emotions and those feelings that you just had are real. Right? When you're stuck in survival mode, you're stuck unable to access that. You're stuck in a place where, we just launched a business, okay? I was in a little bit of survival mode for a couple months. And if I met any of you over the last couple months, hopefully you can see that as you've gotten to spend more time with me over the last few weeks, Chris, that I'm a little bit nicer to be around. I'm a little bit more shining in my best self. But like my wife had to hold some massive space because I was experiencing stress. I was laying in bed at night. My heart was racing. My breath was speeding up. My thoughts were running. And thankful to years of meditation and mindfulness and breath work and lots of other things, I was able to observe myself having anxiety. And so one take-home piece that I want you all to have is to never take ownership of something you're experiencing. See, I wasn't anxious. I didn't have anxiety. I was not an anxious person. I was experiencing anxiety, and that's okay, and it happens. And I was sitting there, laying there, trying to go to sleep, feeling all of these feelings happening in my body, and for the first time, being able to create empathy for the people that I work with that do have anxiety, because a lot of people are dealing with anxiety. I've always had sympathy, but having this empathy was beautiful, right? But I was in this survival mode, right? I was in this stressed out state. I was operating out of stress, and it was hard. I wasn't the best person to be around, and it was only worse at home when you don't have to put the show on in front of anyone else. And so I know how much this stuff matters. I know how deep this can go to radically transform lives, families, people. That's why when I was 15 years old and I watched my dad go from not only not having back pain anymore, but somehow like beating an autoimmune disease, I consider it beating because he's not a slave to the medicine. And then our whole family diving into this new lifestyle of true healthcare, not symptom care, not sick care, not reactive care, but care that's designed to help you bulletproof your body, bulletproof your life. Live a life where you're resilient, where you're adaptable, where you're freaking alive. And then when hard things happen to you, that's when from a thrival mode, you're able to say, oh, I'm just experiencing this. And boy, is it painful. And boy, do I not like it. But this will pass because this is just a wave and it's just coming through. The piece for the mind-body connection, the bridge is the nervous system. 100% of the time, the bridge is the nervous system. When you can clear that nervous system, when you can allow the stress to be released from the body, to let go of, to not hold on to it anymore. Because a lot of us are hanging on to the pain that hurt us a while ago because we're stuck with it because it gives us some sort of sense of power and identity. When you let go of that identity, when you recognize I was experiencing that, I don't have to anymore, that I've got all these tools from all of the awesome people in here that can help you move right, that can help you understand, is this a weak muscle or is this a tight muscle? That can help you move functionally so that you have autonomy for the rest of your life and you're not living in fear about at what point in life am I not going to be able to live alone anymore or not able to like make it happen on my own. And then when you have people that can help you become more adaptable, to reduce that stress, to experience deeper quality of life, you guys have it at the tip of your fingertips. It's right here, available for you. All you got to do is jump in. All you got to do is take the opportunity, one step at a time. Healing is a process, and it's a process that happens every single day. Every day you're living in a pattern. That pattern is creating more harmony, more connection, more healing in your body, or it's creating more disharmony, more disconnection, and more disease in your body. It's a matter of time until that disconnection becomes a disease. The body can only operate so long with these small interferences where the brain and the pancreas can't communicate right until disease manifests. Dr. Ken, correct? Yep. Dr. Ken mentioned something before about syndromes. And that syndromes mean it's a bunch of symptoms and we don't really know exactly what it is. Well, if you go through a pathology textbook, most pathologies, idiopathic. We don't know what causes it, but we call it a pathology. I'm about done. We call it a pathology because it's simply a list of symptoms that put together fit this box that we call this thing. I don't diagnose people in my practice. All I do is I discover what's not functioning, what's disconnected, what does this person need to remove the interference so that their brain and body can do what their body's designed to do, which is heal. Your body's designed to heal. It does it all day, every day. It's your choice on whether or not you're living in survival mode or thrival mode. I'm Dr. Dyllon. I own the Source Chiropractic. We're a holistic healing center. And just so that you guys know, we are doing a new person special right now. Our new patient exams, normally $220. Right now we're offering it at $90 until our grand opening. We're trying to really build a community in here. If you guys vibe with this, if you're looking for individualized care, if you're looking to be seen, heard, acknowledged, and get to the next level in your life, I'd love to take care of you. Thank you.
And everybody squat.
Is that good enough? I told you I'd bring it down. How's it going, man?
Brian.
Dr. Dyllon. Brian, good to meet you.
I need to bring my son by and see you, and has he been complaining with his back?
Yeah.
For about 6-8 months now.
6 to 8 months. How's your son?
He's 26.
Okay, yeah. Here, get him in.
And he was just complaining about it yesterday and today. He ain't been sleeping good and stuff. So
Yeah.
I've only lived here less than 2 years total.
Uh-huh.
So where I come from, I had a chiropractor I seen and all that. So.
Where are you from? To the south somewhere.
Well, originally Biloxi, Mississippi.
Okay.
And I have a business and a home in Missouri for 20-some years, and now I moved it down here.
Okay. What kind of business?
I do HVAC for a living.
Oh, nice. You'll do well down here.
Yeah.
You'll do
I'm
very
working
well.
that out.
Okay.
So it's taken a while, but we're
Yeah.
getting there too. So I went through the same stuff you're talking about.
You did.
And in Arkansas, I used to see a chiropractor guy that he used what he called the best technique.
That's
It's
crazy.
holistic.
He just started someone today who came from the best technique. I'm familiar as well. So you've experienced the best.
I actually know the man who his granddaddy started that.
No way.
He's a good friend of mine.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you're connected.
Yeah.
So that's why you were vibing with all that.
Yeah.
I
so
felt
I'm
you over
like-
here. You were like, uh-huh.
When he was talking a lot of stuff, I'm like, I may have found the guy I want to go see now. Because to me, it's not just all about get you in there, pop your bones and leave.
No, we do
I've
the
been
energy
there.
work too.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. I like, because, so I like to call our care, we like to serve the whole human. That's why I talk about the emotions a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I combine energy work with the structural work. So like the best work stuff, that subtler stuff. But then
It's amazing how it worked.
It's amazing.
It
It's amazing. Thank you. Connect tomorrow. Have a good night.
Yeah, I'd love to set up an appointment.
Perfect.
Bring him in, so.
Yeah. Do you want to set one up right now?
Yeah.
Christine, can you set him up with an appointment? Can you set him up with an appointment? His son's got some low back pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got our schedule right here available. Let's find a time to get him in. Cool. And yeah, if you're looking for wellness care to continue stuff, I do that too. It's not just people that like need the healing. We take care of people like long term afterwards too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so the cool part about the way I do things is the exam that I do lands you into the care that is necessary for you, right? So I got some people coming in, and they're great. There's a lot of healthy people around here. And they're like, listen, I'm just looking for holistic health care. And I'm like, cool. We do the exam, and they slide right into like a once a week or an every other week or something like that. And then some people are like, we got more functional stuff to work on, and we kind of get them to a place until they can get there. But we're not just like symptom-based, you know? You don't have to have problems to come in and get results.
Right.
Yeah, but she can get you on the schedule for sure.
Is there a day or time that works best?
Well, I go a lot working. He's just been sitting around the house some because he's fixing to get into pilot training school.
Pilot training?
Yeah.
Nice. He'll want to get this done before he does that, sitting in the cockpit.
Yeah.
And coming in on those landings. I'm taking care of a pilot trainer right now, and he's like, dude, I got to get this right because when we come in and land, his first couple landings aren't always so smooth.
That's what he's doing now, doing a lot of groundwork, so he has more.
Yeah, she'll get you hooked up and we can get him in.
But, what you got available this week? I don't know if I can do it tomorrow, but.
We got some stuff this week.
Hey, bro, that was amazing, bro.
Thanks, dude.
That was good
Appreciate
shit, bro.
that.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. You were vibing back there.
You're a really
Thank
good
you.
speaker.
Thank
sure.
you. Appreciate it.
We were like, yeah, this is
I felt a couple people that I was like, you dig it, you dig it, you dig it.
I think he's speaking to the soul right now.
Yeah, man.
Only the soulful people understand right now.
What did I say when I met you?
Yeah,
I was like,
that's what I was saying.
I was like,
really just, I was like, oh, I did, bro. I knew
when I met him, I was like, yo, we're gonna vibe.
Yeah, bro.
Because
He delivered. He delivered. No lacking here.
thank you, much appreciated.
Yeah, man, that was beautiful.
I did not realize that. What you doing wearing a Life University?
Come on, bro. I stepped foot in there. Took their little leadership thing.
The Life Leadership Weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a lot of problems happened, and then I was like, you know what? Let's wait a little bit.
Oh,
So, yeah.
you did tell me you were thinking about it. Yeah, I remember
I
that.
don't think I ever told you I went black though. So,
That's sick, man.
I was this close.
That's sick. Let me put this stuff up, then I can talk with you guys.
Double check that and make sure.
And this is for your son, right?
Yeah, but I want to come in and do it myself.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I was gonna say what we can also do is give your son a call tomorrow, just to confirm that time works well for him. So we'll make sure that we do that tomorrow too.
Perfect.
Does he live with you?
He stays with me right
Okay.
now.
So you'll be able to tell him tonight, yo, I signed you up for something.
I will. And probably, yeah, he'll be ready for that. He's waiting to hear from him, so he's probably going to have to leave out in about 2 to 3 weeks anyway around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
He don't know if he's going to San Diego for schooling or Phoenix.
Not here?
Or Tulsa.
I know there's schooling here.
Yeah, but the other schools and what they got to offer is for the money.
Better?
He did so much research.
Yeah, dude, go where it's best. Well, then in that case, we can, since I know that I've only got a short amount of time to work with him,
Yeah.
I'll build a care plan based off the time that I have.
And he may be here a little longer than that.
Okay. We'll chat about all that stuff.
What it's looking like.
Yeah.
It'll be by Thanksgiving and we don't know.
Okay. For sure not going to be here past the new year.
No.
Right.
He'll either do one of those programs or he'll take the...
But he's 26, and we'll be able to get him great results that quick.
He remembers hurting it at the gym.
That's typically where it starts. For a 26-year-old, it's going to be mostly at the gym. The thing is the gym was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the dysfunction that got him in the gym, or the dysfunction then while he was moving in the gym that finally it was like, yeah, that's most often what happens. Cool, man. I'm glad it spoke to you. Thank you for being here. Brian, right?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Very nice to meet y'all.
Very nice to meet you too. Look forward to it, man.
Yeah, me too.
We good? That felt real good. Fucking tore it up. I don't know where that came from.
He's back dance.
Huh?
You can do your back dance.
I did a dance?
No, I said you can do it. You want to take this one off?
Yeah.
Can I hand this to you?
Yes, you
That
can.
one's yours.
I will take it. Yeah, both of them?
I didn't wear both. I told Chris I wasn't gonna.
I said, fuck that.
I was like, I'm not wearing freaking. You relax, dude. I'm not wearing 3 mics.